Hey, everybody. We are here. This is Mental Monday, and I am your host, Lakita Long. We're so excited to be coming to you on this Monday. Just wanted to give you guys just a little shout out. Just in case people don't know why you do what you do, tell them it's the God in you. We are excited, super duper excited to be coming to you. Hey, I'm so excited that I get a chance to love on you guys and to come to get a chance to do something I absolutely love, and we're gonna see how far we go with this, right? Hey. Oh, so as we begin to transition into what we're going to be talking about today, I want us to, I'm so grateful for everybody that's been chiming in, all the people that have been concerned and have given us information. We are going to do something. I think it will be a blessing to us individually. And let me just start off, first of all, that last week we had some questions from our last show, which was, is sex all mental? And we had a question from, I'm just going to say her initials, SS. And she asked this, or I made this statement. I was on my first marriage and I trusted someone that my husband was an organist, and him and the choir director, they started dating. He divorced me, got married. They spent a lot of time together by themselves. We're at the same church. There was no rebuke. She was just sharing that women, you can't have other women in your house. She's learned that. At the time, she mentioned that she was only 23 years of age. And she said that the disappointing part was that the pastor said nothing to her. The person that her husband ended up dating was a lady pastor. So it was just a lot. So she was just wanting to just share with us from last week, is sex all mental, and how disappointing sex can be outside the marriage, in the marriage, but particularly when you trust other people to do certain things. And it goes perfectly with what we're going to be talking about on today. I just am so excited. So let me just say something to her comment or statement. You know, as a woman, I always find it very powerful to be a woman. And with that, there's a responsibility. So I'm not going to be behind a closed room door with a man that's married or with the door closed. I just don't want it to look a certain kind of way. I don't want the enemy to get involved. So if you're a woman, and we're just addressing what one of the ladies had a question about from last week. If you have questions about being in the presence of a married man or whatever the case, or you feel kind of funny, you know, then you need to deal with the feel kind of funny. It could be on your part, his part, doesn't matter. Just don't make it your rule. Just decide that there needs to be somebody near or there or what have you, because sex is mental. I mean, you can have telepathic sex, and we'll talk about that a whole nother time. And it's the truth. You can look at somebody, and if they, depending on where they at in the day, an orgasm could happen. And it doesn't mean that you're a freak. It just means that, you know, we're sexual beings. You know, we are spirit. We have a mind and the whole bit. So just maintain your integrity, women of God, and don't be behind closed doors with men that are married. If he's not married, then, you know, and you're not married, you know, then govern yourself accordingly with the standards that a woman like yourself would want to have. So we're excited about what we're going on today. Listen, before we get started, if you have any questions or anything that you would like for us to mention, please do so. And you can email us at lakita@lakitalong.org. So we're excited about it. Now, let's get to the meat of it all. I love what I get a chance to do. So I want to thank each and every last one of you guys. You guys have blown me up by way of text, inbox, emails, anonymously. Let me interview you. We got some really hot, juicy topics on the Mondays to come. And so we're trying to keep them down to 30 minutes so they can be very powerful, impactful, and informational. So today we are talking about the power of disappointment and how it affects our relationships. And I'm coming from the perspective of how it affects men in their relationship. I got a chance to interview tons of awesome men over the last week that were upfront, raw, uncut, men of different races, different background beliefs, believers. It was just awesome. So let's start with the etymology, or the actual backdrop of what the word disappointment or disappoint means. So I looked it up, and from the early 15th centuries, disappoint meant to dispossess an appointed office. Dispossess an appointed office. From the Middle French time, it's disappointer. Disappointer. And what that means in French is to undo the appointment, remove one from office. Now watch this. So you think about it. Disappointment means to remove one from office. This is what the French came to believe that the word disappoint means back in the 15th century. Now, the modern sense of disappointment is to frustrate expectations. Another definition would be fail to keep one's appointment. Now, this is really important. Fail to keep one's appointment. Now, when someone disappoints you, or when you disappoint someone else, I want you to get this definition ingrained in your head. You fail to keep their expectation, or you remove something from an office, or you removed an appointment without replacing it. Okay. So when you or I disappoint someone, we are undoing an appointment that we set up with someone. All right. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. The other thing that's really important is that words that are synonymous for the word disappointment is the word, which I thought was really interesting. I love the dictionary. I love to learn. The word cheat, cheat. The word cheat is synonymous with disappoint, which I never would have thought. The other word is dissatisfied, fail, and let down. So here it is that we find ourselves. And I'm sorry, I broke my stand by accident, so I have to go out and pick up another one, or else it'll be hands-free. But when we disappoint, we cheat, we dissatisfy, we fail, we let down. So when you or I disappoint someone, and so when you use the words, they disappointed me, I want you to understand what you're actually saying. I want you to realize that you are saying that someone failed you, let you down, cheated you out of something. And so I want you to kind of consider what that really looks like and what that really feels. Has somebody really cheated you out of something? Is somebody really letting you down? And why have you let them in so to the point that they can let you down? So here's the deal. We're talking about the power of disappointment, because I believe that many people, particularly those in the household of faith, we are moving under the guise of great disappointment. I think we are living in a cycle of disappointment, which is why it's difficult to accept other people's individuality. So I want to help us understand the importance and the power of disappointment, and why we have to get a grip on what we do as it pertains to disappointment. So when you hear the word disappointment, I want you to remember its original meaning, which it is going to be gravely overlooking someone at some time in their life. Okay. So have you gravely overlooked somebody in their life? Now, Dr. Lamia, Lamia, Dr. Mary Lamia, she is a psychologist, and she wrote a powerful article, and she's local here in California. And she wrote a powerful article in the magazine Psychology Today about expectations, disappointments, and sadness. And her article is phenomenal. She highlighted the various degrees of differences between sadness and grief. And then she explained how disappointment is a profound way to experience sadness. Now, I want to stop right there. Disappointment is experienced through sadness. Now, watch this. People tend to twist their own thinking so as to avoid feeling disappointment. But what happens is, because disappointment is likened to that of sadness, it always shows up, even if it shows up in anger. Now, watch this. When you are dealing with someone and they seem to come off angry. Before you assume that they're actually angry, I want you to consider that they may not be angry at all. They may be very much disappointed, but the sadness keeps rubbing up against the disappointment, and they don't want to show disappointment. So the anger takes over more than the sadness, right? So, because most anger is undealt with sadness. That is just the truth. Most anger is undealt with sadness. And as believers, I don't think we have dealt with the opportunity to unveil or unmask our emotions like we should, as if God is just going to come down and take all of our stuff away. And that's not what the book says. And so I want us to really look at what the power of disappointment is doing to us and how it affects our relationships. Clinically speaking, when we don't allow ourselves to have expectations that are realistic, we will always fall short of being disappointed. Now, when I talk about disappointment, I want you to understand that I don't want to talk about it as it pertains to someone else doing something else to you. I'm very much more wanting us to look at what you're doing to you. I think that we disappoint ourselves more often than we want to give ourselves the credit for, because it's humiliating. It's shameful to realize that we disappoint ourselves more frequently than other people. I asked a question in my college class I was teaching last week. How many of you have ever committed a murder in this class? It was like 22 students. And I said, how many of you have ever committed a murder? And you could almost hear like their breath. People like literally stopped breathing because they was like, oh my God, raise your hand if you've ever committed a murder. And of course, in my first class, nobody raised their hand. Ironically, in my second class, a boy raised his hand, and I said, explain to me what you mean. And when he raised his hand, everybody looked around and was like, whoa, what's going on here? And he said, I've done it with my mouth. So he was cognizant of the fact that he, through his mouth, has murdered somebody. And I said, and you know who you've murdered the most, more than anybody else? And he said, who? I said, yourself. And then I gave the analogy for everyone. I'm going to give this analogy because this is the part of disappointment that we don't want to rub up against, because it deals with us. We're always looking for somebody else to blame. But I want you to get the blame game off of somebody else. This is Mental Monday, so we're talking about the power of disappointment. So for a second, we're not going to talk about nobody else. I want you to talk about the fact that you disappoint yourself, and how you do it is you murder who you are. So when you tell yourself, I can't, you take a knife to your head. Every time you say, I can't, I'm not going to, I'm not able to, you murder yourself. You murder the inside motivation for you to thrive in the spirit of excellence. And then what happens is you become inordinately disappointed with what your outcome is in life. And that has nothing to do with anybody else, people. This has everything to do with you. So then what happens is, if you haven't really caught the sadness behind the fact that you've let yourself down, then your sadness turns into anger. And if you don't deal with the anger and the sadness, then sadness turned inward actually is depression. This was the very first theory that the Lord showed me as a freshman at UC Berkeley. I was studying in the library at the Tolman Library, which is a psychology library. I was studying there as a freshman, and the Lord downloaded to me and showed me the real causation of depression, and gave me an insight to the mind of man. And he said that when man has a level of sadness that hasn't been dealt with, and what happens is they let the sadness turn inward, and it's the inward pressing against one's own soul that causes them to become depressed. And so if you don't deal with sadness, if you don't deal with the anger, you're surely going to have depression, and you definitely will have the cycle and traumatic experience of disappointment. So if you're just joining us, we've been talking about the power of disappointment. and what it does for you and to you. And I want you to get off from where people have disappointed you. And I want you to look at the fact that you yourself is a total being, an individual, and you yourself have disappointed your own self. You disappointed your own mind, your own heart and spirit. Stuff you said you was going to do last week, you ain't done it. So you disappointed your own self. And what you've done is you've created a cloud of disappointment and a spirit of not finishing what you start. And then what happens is, let one person do something to you that you don't really like, then what happens is all of that frustration, anger, sadness, and all that you had from yourself is translated, projected onto someone else, and they didn't have nothing to do with it. They just happen to be much more easier for you to deal with rather than you accusing yourself. But you've already been accusing yourself. And I'm real passionate about this because I see people becoming sick in the house of God. I see them losing their very essence of being because they won't be truthful about where they are. And so I want to encourage you today. There is no one to blame but ourselves when we fall into a pattern and a cycle of depression. So here we are. I want to get to some meat of some stuff. I got the wonderful opportunity last week to interview a bunch of powerful men and to ask them their thoughts about the power of disappointment. I want to just also, many people have chimed in and some people have been texting me about my hair. Let me just kind of give a plug and a shout out at a commercial. The hairstylist is Wanda Floyd. I actually have two hairstylists, but the one that particularly did this hairstyle is Miss Wanda Floyd. She's located Inspirational Styles and Designs and Cuts and Designs in Brentwood, California, and the address is 1280 Central Boulevard. Definitely a wonderful therapeutic experience, and I'm so grateful for her putting her stamp on my brand, and I thank God for her. So going back to disappointment, I asked several men these questions. Here were the questions that I asked. When do you get disappointed? Number two, do you ever forgive someone who has disappointed you to your core? And number three, how do men repair relationships that have gone through much disappointment? So today we are addressing disappointment from the viewpoint or the vantage point from a man. I've been really asking God, what is up with all of the women being single? Why are we all single? What's really going on? I don't believe that there's a lack of great men. I just don't believe any of that. And I know that that's just not the truth. There is something else that is going on, and we're going to find out. I don't know when, but I believe we're going to stumble across the answer. But I asked one brother, when do you get disappointed? And this brother was very interesting. He said, I get disappointed when I feel betrayed. Do you hear that, women? When men feel betrayed, they're disappointed. Now, the way in which betrayal is looked at from a man's point of view, when it's a woman doing the betraying, can be something as simple as you tell your man, oh, honey, I don't have time to do that right now. But yet he looks on your timeline and you had time, y'all, to post all of your godlike sayings, but you in a loving relationship with a man. So he doesn't understand that. He may not be betrayed to the core, but he doesn't understand your inability to do some of the things that he asked you to do. So when men feel betrayed, for men, this particular guy said that loyalty, the main issue is loyalty, not love. Did you hear that? He said men are concerned about loyalty. While they're concerned about love is equated to them through loyalty. Did you hear that? So when a man is disappointed, loyalty is either somewhere mishandled, betrayal is somewhere mishandled, and therefore when those two things are mishandled, then his ability to show you that he loves you becomes null and void, right? So when a man feels betrayed, it's great disappointment. The other thing is that he said that it's the nature of a man not necessarily to go back to a place where they have been deeply disappointed and wounded. They just consider it a loss. So if you're wondering why that guy's not coming back or whatever the case may be, sometimes, ladies, it has nothing to do with us. It may all be very much so them. but you have to make sure that you are living in such a way that we are not becoming a part of this sort of disappointment cycle that men feel and see as it pertains to betrayal and loyalty. So then I asked the question, how does this particular guy, how do men tend to resolve grudges, or do they have grudges? And he said, absolutely, men have grudges and they hold grudges, particularly when they don't see change. So then I asked, well, how do men resolve grudges? And his answer was very simple. He said, men resolve grudges on any level, at any depth, when they see change. So, women, here's the deal. You want your man to be a certain kind of way, or even if you're in friendships with men, they need to see change, not talk about change, actual change. And because when they don't, it's a letdown. It's a complete disappointment. Now, when I asked these questions from another guy, whoa, I got a list of stuff. And I'm telling you why it's so important, the power of disappointment, because I believe it affects your relationship. It also kills one's spirit. And if you're not certain how to engage with the guy, these can be some of the reasons why they're not engaging. So first of all, this individual said, I got disappointed, or I get disappointed with women when they will not take responsibility for their actions and blame him for their mistakes and justify their offenses. That was a mouthful. That was a mouthful. So basically, let me just say it. This brother said, I get disappointed with women when she will not take responsibility for her actions, blames him for her mistakes, and justifies her offenses. So, for example, I'll give you an example. I used to be terrible at where I parked at when I was married. And so I was terrible. And I always got a bunch of tickets. Oh, my God. And so, for example, as it pertains to this particular guy, if he was to address me, if I was his wife, and he said, hey, you keep getting all these tickets, babe. What's going on? And I said, I ain't getting no tickets. Just pay for the tickets. Pay for the tickets. I mean, it's my responsibility, and I go all off. And I said, you supposed to pay for anything I got going on in my life. Well, this brother was saying to us that he's disappointed when his wife, our girlfriend here, actually his girlfriend, does not take responsibility for her actions or blames for her mistakes. Or justifies her offenses. So here it is, where men just want us to fess up. That's it. Don't give half truths. Refusing to apologize when you are completely wrong. He also talked about, one of the main disappointments for him, and actually all the other brothers said the same thing too, except for one, was the immense amount of selfishness that women tend to have, although they don't believe that they're selfish. So when a man is engaged in conversation with you or in a relationship with you, one of the ways that you keep his attention is by being open, loving, nurturing, and engaging, soft, graceful. And at times when you need to be, you can step up and be whatever. If he likes that hood chick or whatever, you learn your man and you do as accordingly. But the disappointment sets in when he sees that you are selfish with your time, selfish with your energy. And particularly if you are selfish in a marital sense, if you're selfish where, for example, one guy, or several guys said, we've been married a long time, and she likes for me to give her oral sex, but she won't give it back to me anymore. And here's what my mother used to say to me: whatever you start doing in the marriage, unless you physically cannot do, then you need to continue to do it. If you gave your husband oral sex at the beginning of the marriage and you can physically still do that, don't disappoint, cheat, because we learned that the word disappoint actually means to cheat. Don't cheat your husband out of something that he's come to love from you, especially when you want him to do that to you. It is an act of selfishness to want something that you yourself are unwilling to give. And some women have told me, oh, I'm grossed out, but you weren't grossed out when you were doing it before you were married. Or you weren't grossed out when you were doing it the first year in your marriage. Or if you were so grossed out, this is my thought, this is just me, then you should have never done it. You should have never done it at all. Because men tend to be creatures of habit. So if you gave them oral sex in the beginning of the marriage, they're looking for it. And a great disappointment is when you don't. They feel betrayed, let down, and cheated, to be honest. So that was what that brother had said. One of the other things that this other brother said, we're talking about the power of disappointment, because I don't really believe that people understand how disappointing it can be when you are around people who are not truthful about their emotions. And so these men went out on the limb, and I asked them all kinds of questions. And they gave me some really great answers. I'm just looking down at it because I want to make sure I get the right information. One guy said he used to get disappointed when things didn't go the way that he expected. But he says now he takes it to God, asks for God's will, and that's how he moves on forward. And I think that's awesome, because that's how he does it. So he went from where he was to where he needs to be. And he said that in the old days before he became a Christian, he didn't understand the importance of forgiveness. Now, this is something that's really important, people of God, and those who may not know the Lord. Disappointment is rooted in unforgiveness. It's rooted in bitter thinking. It's rooted in undisciplined thoughts. When you or I remain in a disappointing cycle of belief, we essentially have to remain in an unforgiving way. Let that sink in for a second. Because you can't be in a spirit of repentance and a spirit of freedom in Christ and a spirit of letting go and being renewed in your mind and walk around with the spirit of disappointment. It just don't work. And or giving out or being the participant in provoking disappointment. So I want you to consider, okay, and I see that question, Charlotte. I'm going to answer that in just one little second. So I want you to understand what the power of disappointment does, why it's the way that it is, and quit blaming. If you're just coming on, my rant for the beginning of our Mental Monday was quit blaming other people for disappointment. It's your anger, it's your sadness, it's your depression that is creating the disappointment. You keep putting your high expectations for something that somebody else should be doing in your life in their care. And we're not to do that for nobody. We're not to give that to nobody. If people let you down, even in termed agreements, we got to let it go or else it will hinder us. So Charlotte asks the question, what about the disappointment that we as women feel with the husband? So I'm assuming, Charlotte, and let me know if I'm right or wrong, maybe the husband has done something to the wife and you still have a disappointment regarding that. So let me know if I'm on the right track. I'll start answering and you can let me know. Let me tell you something, women, that I've learned being married and now divorced. We can hold stuff for a really long time, women, and play games and kind of make ourselves think like we are okay. When we've been hurt to the core from the men that we love, like our husband, something we weren't expecting. Like, for example, if a husband is accusing you of cheating, and all the while he got a little piece on the side, not even a little piece, but, created another little being on the side, that's enough to blow up a whole little town, right? And that's enough to be so super disappointed. Or, for example, a woman came to a retreat that I was at, and she was explaining that her husband, who was a preacher, brought home after 25 years of marriage. He was cheating all the while. The 25 years of marriage, it just gets on my nerves. Bringing her home diseases. Now, here's my thing. Don't disappoint me and do something crazy and cheat on me. But definitely don't make me want to cuss and say, what in the God, boop, ba-doop, 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 that you want to have sex and then bring your diseases back to me. Oh my God. That would be more than disappointing, but that's on the road. So when you feel disappointed by your husband, you still have to walk out what God's word expects of you. Remember, we are always talking about what we must do, what God's word expects of you to do, what you know to do, and make sure that your emotions is not having the best of who you are. That's really, really critical. Least when you try to pray, God don't hear your prayers because you're so disappointed that now your anger is causing you to sin. It's causing you to sin. And so we must stay very true to having our love relationship with God first. We have to love God more than we love anything else. And then we appropriately love our husbands, emphatically love our husbands. But when we put into proper position our love for God, our love for our husband, our love for our children, we're not going to die at the cycle of disappointment. And we're dying at the cycle of disappointment, not women, but men. When I talked about disappointment and asked all these different men to give me their thoughts about it, it was amazing. One guy talked to me for an hour and a half, ran into him in the grocery store, a brother friend of mine's, and we ended up talking, standing up till we had to go get some new ice cream because he was so passionate about getting the information to us women about what makes men disappointed. And so if you're just chiming in, what makes men disappointed is betrayal, lack of loyalty, and because they equate love to loyalty. Wow, that was so powerful when that brother told me that. And selfishness, expecting him to do what we aren't willing to do. You know, let's get it together, women. We want everyone to do for us, but we don't want to do for them. That's even in friendships. Step up the plate. And be your best you. And we do have to, communication, you're right, Jim. We have to forgive for real. And I'm going to tell you something. We ain't forgiving for real. Now, there are causes, I believe, that some disappointments in marriages, for some, you have to separate. Or somebody might die. Like if you're getting abused physically and beat down. It don't take no rocket scientist for anybody to tell you to get out of the house at least. But I can't tell you whether or not you should divorce or any of that nature, but he needs help. And you probably do too, because you probably don't even realize that you have truly become a codependent of an abuser. So if you're just chiming in, we're right at our perfect time. This is Mental Mondays. I'm your host, Lakita Long, and we've been talking about the power of disappointment and how it affects our relationships. I really, really hope that it's been a blessing. Remember, our betrayal, our loyalty, it equates to love for our men in our lives. They really look at how we treat them, what we say, what we don't say, what we don't say. It really, really speaks volume to men. They're always watching. They're always looking. So let's give them something to look at. Let's give them something to watch for. And so are there any questions that anybody else have? If not, feel free. I'll go back through the whole thread and I will answer each and every last question that you have. Please share this post with other people. People need to come from underneath the cycle of disappointment. And let me just give you 3 things that you need to do. This is my Mental Mondays help. 3 things of dealing with disappointment. Number 1, let go of the fixed ideas. Let go of the fixed ideas. Number 2, recognize that disappointment is a vivid experience of sadness. Woo! Recognize that disappointment is a vivid experience of sadness. And number 3, redirect your energy and expectations of others and watch disappointment not become a reality. So redirect your energy and expectations of others and watch disappointment not become your reality. So I hope that has helped you. Be blessed. I love you so, so much. Remember, the power of disappointment is real. Don't play. Don't shout over it. Don't sing over it. deal with it. Get to the root, because unforgiveness is attached to it. Anger is attached to it. Sadness is attached to it. And then what happens if all those things go undealt with, it definitely becomes depression. And depression not checked becomes all kinds of things. All right. Love you so much. Mwah. I am your host, Lakita Long, affectionately known as the People's Therapist. This has been a Mental Monday, and we love you so, so much. Mwah. Blessings. Thank you guys for holding. I don't know what's happening to this wonderful people. So love these iPhones, but sometimes iPhone ain't always the blessing for sure, because it will not let me shut off. Blessings to you. God bless you so much. It's gonna... You're welcome, Charlotte.